So, did you know that if you're a layperson, like I am, that it falls upon us to evangelize those people around us? And the reason for that is very simple. That if we don't, no one else will. There's not like this big team of evangelists who are going to evangelize all the peoples in the world, right? Or if there is that team is made up of you and me. There are people in our lives right now that if they don't hear the gospel from us, if they don't somehow see a witness to the love of God in us, chances are very good they're not going to see it at all. And so the Lord wants us to evangelize in our families and in the workplace and in the marketplace. And let me tell you a little story. So I was working on contract with the Canadian government as a computer programmer. And at this time, I'd become a little bit more public about my faith. I was just becoming more comfortable about, sharing my faith. At a minimum, at least not hiding it. If someone said, "What'd you do this weekend?" and if I spent a lot of time in church, I'd say that, So, and I think at the time I thought, hey, I'm getting pretty bold here. Anyway, there was a really nice woman that I was working with who was complaining of migraine headaches. And I thought, I told her, well, look, Marg, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for those headaches of yours, that they'll go away. And as I'm sharing that, or as I'm walking away, I guess as I was walking, I was thinking, no. That will not be enough. You are not just to pray for her. You are to pray with her. Now, at this point in my evangelization training, the things I'd learned from others and some of the things that I'd learned through personal circumstances, I'd learned the value of praying with people. But most of the time, my experience of that was praying for people in a church context. You're at church or at a conference in a retreat, and that's a pretty comfortable environment to pray with someone, to pray, to ask God to touch that person or to heal them or whatever. But not at the workplace, not on my job, until that day. And I wrestled with myself. I guess I wrestled with God, argued with myself, I can't do that. How am I going to do that? And the conviction about praying for this person. Because praying being so integral to evangelizing, I just absolutely felt I had to do it. So then the question became, how? How am I going to pray for this good woman at work? Now, I had my own office just at that time. The way it worked, I had my own workspace. But Marg shared a workspace with someone else. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to execute this. How was I actually going to do this? How was I actually going to get in, pray with Marg, and get out before her colleague catches me in the act of praying, right? So I kind of played the scene in my mind a number of times, how I was going to do this, what I was going to say. It was a little bit scripted, And I remember thinking, well, I don't have to pray for very long. That's one thing I had learned, because Jesus himself is the one who does the healing, right? He does the healing. It's not my fancy, long-winded, eloquent prayer that does the healing. Jesus does the healing. And number two, Jesus set a really good example for prayer. He would pray really short prayers like, pick up your mat and go home. Amen. So I thought, well, if Jesus is my example for prayer, then I'm good to go on the short prayer. So anyway, the day would come when I was going to pray for Marg. And I remember, going into her office and saying, "Hey, Mark, and I probably spoke pretty fast because I was fairly nervous. So, hey, Mark, remember I said I would pray for you? Well, that's okay, but it's much better if I can pray with you. Would it be okay if I could say a prayer with you right now for the healing of your migraine headaches?" And she said, "Look, I don't believe in any of that stuff." I said, "That's okay, I do. So, Father, I just ask you to heal Mark." Amen. See, Mark? That didn't hurt at all. That was okay, right? Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, gotta go. And I got out of there so fast, let me tell you. As a matter of fact, just, the way the whole thing went, it was almost just like, have you ever had situations where they're kind of semi-traumatic and the scene kind of replays, the scene kind of replays in your mind? I just kind of, it was almost replaying in my mind as I was going through it, it just kind of, I got out of there so fast. Anyway, it was a semi-traumatic experience. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that was definitely a first. Here I am praying for someone at the office. Now, there was a good age gap between Marg and I, so, this wasn't, I wasn't going to get into trouble placing my hands on her. That wasn't going to be an awkward situation I was going to have to deal with, thankfully. Anyway, a few days went by, and Marg came by my office, and she looked kind of sad, and she said, "I haven't had a headache in a few days." "I don't believe it." And she just kind of shuffled off. And then she came back, a number of days later. Same look. "No headache in a few days." "I don't believe it." Anyway, the following 3 weeks, the headaches did not return, and I think she was having headaches like a couple times a week. And then I lost track of Marg after that because my contract was finished, And so I don't know what happened, but what I do know is this, is that I don't know whether she liked being healed or not, but one thing I do know is that she was healed. And it impacted her, right? And my prayer is that it changed her life. But we may have situations where we say things, where we do things that touch people, and we don't really know what happened, right? And this was not uncommon in the ministry of Jesus. I mean, there were people that he healed. And we know from some of the texts that those people that were healed, when they were later asked by others saying, "Hey, what happened to you? Who healed you?" And the person said, "I have no idea who healed me." So there can be times where God will touch with people and we don't know what happened to them. But the important thing is that we stepped out so that God himself could move and touch them. So are you ready to do that today? Are you ready to step out and maybe pray for someone at the water cooler? Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow.